Let's go ahead and begin with a very simple form. So go ahead and move to your resource pack directory, and in the third folder called Forms and Sessions, let's open up the first step, which is called test.php using data from a form.step. Go ahead and copy all of this code and paste it over the code that's currently in your test.php file and save it. Now before we look at the code itself, let's look at a demonstration. So I'm going to jump to the browser and I'm going to refresh my test.php file. Here's the form. It says myString, and then there's an input, and then a submit button that says display the string. So if we go ahead and type hello, and we click display the string, it says your string was hello. If we type something else and click display the string, you'll see that new text here. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump back to the editor and take a look at the code. So in this first line, what we're doing is adding a PHP comment. You see an opening PHP tag, but we also have the closing PHP tag at the end. The reason we might want to do something like this instead of using an HTML-based comment is an HTML-based comment will show in the source code, whereas a PHP comment will disappear when the HTML is rendered. We have some HTML here, and then we have some PHP down here. This HTML is simply a form, and the PHP here is processing the data from that form. So form structure, if you're not familiar with it, includes at least an action attribute and a method attribute. The action tells this form where to submit the form. So this is the actual file that it will submit to. You see that it's test.php here, which means that when we submit this form, it's going to submit this form back to the page that rendered it. Now we could use a separate file for the processing, but there are some advantages to having the form and the processing in the same file, and you'll see why as we proceed. The method attribute tells us how to pass data that gets submitted with the form, and there are two options. One is get, and another is post, which we'll explore later. Using the get method, we'll put that data in the URL. So if we jump back to the browser, I'm going to go ahead and go back right now, and we look at the URL up here, you see we're at test.php, and then there's a question mark, which indicates the beginning of a query string, and then it has a set of variables based on what got passed to it through the form. So we have myString equals something. So something is the data that got submitted. MyString is the name of the input here. So if we go back to the code, I'm going to jump back to the editor here, and we look at this form, you see that the input here has a name of myString. When you're troubleshooting forms or getting to know forms a little bit more, using the get method could be an easy way to expose data without having to add any special code. So this form has the two inputs. We have the one we just looked at called myString. Notice that myString is associated with the name attribute of the input, and the type is text. And then we have another input, which has a type of submit, which is our submit button, and it says display the string. And when we want a certain text to display in that submit button, we'll use the value attribute. So at this point in the code, we add an opening PHP tag, and then we do this check to see whether the get myString variable is set. The get variable is an array where the keys are the names of the inputs, and then the value is the value that got submitted. So we can get the value by passing the key, which is the name of the input, to the get array. Now the first time this form is rendered, this get variable doesn't have any values in it, and so when we check to see if it is set, it will return false, which means that this code won't run, and we're done with this code so far. When the form gets submitted, the test.php file will load again, but this time there will be some variables in that get array. So if we start from the top, just like PHP would do, we re-render this form again, and then we start running this PHP. We check to see if there's a myString key in the get array, and there is this time around. And so we're going to go ahead and run this code here, which is printing an h1 tag or a heading 1 tag. You see the opening tag here and the closing tag here, and it says your string was, and then we're using a concatenation operator in order to add the value of the get array with the myString key, and then we use the concatenation operator again to add the ending h1 tag. So let's go ahead and look at this one more time from the browser perspective. What I'm going to do is remove the query string from the URL so we get test.php, and I'm going to hit enter. So now our form is fresh. It's as if it never got submitted at all. So this is the first time that our PHP file is being run, so it renders the form, but then when we use the if statement to check to see if there's a value for the myString key in the get array, it will return false, so it won't run any additional code. As soon as we submit something here, I'm going to go ahead and enter hey and click display the string. It will add the values and the keys of the submitted data to the URL and then reload the page. We can then access that data by using the get array, which is generated automatically by PHP. And because there's now a value for the myString key in that get array, then it runs some PHP which renders this h1 tag with our string printed as part of the output. So in the previous video, we looked at the workflow of a typical form. The first part is rendering the form. The next part is the user fills out and then submits the form. And then we process the form and do something with it and potentially display a confirmation. And this part here could be considered the confirmation.